Welcome to this explainer. If you follow the criminal justice landscape, you already know Pennsylvania county jails are facing a massive overcrowding crisis. But today, we're not just going to look at the headlines. We are diving deep into the actual mechanics of the problem. We'll be looking directly at the latest data, policies, and the systemic, on-the-ground realities as of June 2026. Usually, when a local jail runs out of beds, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is almost always, okay, we need to build a bigger building, right? But what if physical space isn't the real problem at all? What if overflowing facilities are really just a visible symptom of intense pressures happening entirely outside the building's walls? Today, we're going to reframe this. We're shifting away from looking at it as a construction issue, and instead we're going to treat it as a fascinating, albeit pretty challenging, systemic puzzle. So here is our roadmap for today. First, the overcrowding crisis. Second, why beds fill up. Third, inside the jail walls. Fourth, Pennsylvania's patchwork system. And finally, number 5, fixing the pipeline. Let's jump into Section 1, the overcrowding crisis. Let's set our baseline. Okay, first things first, we absolutely have to distinguish county jails from state prisons because they serve very different functions in Pennsylvania. County jails are operated locally. They hold people who are awaiting trial or individuals serving shorter maximum sentences. State prisons, on the other hand, are state-operated and house folks serving much longer sentences. Because county facilities handle these shorter stays and pretrial holds, they effectively act as the absolute front line of the justice system. When arrests go up or courts get backed up, it's the county jails that are the very first to absorb that shock and pressure. Because of that, we kind of need to redefine our terms here. Based on the data, overcrowding in Pennsylvania county jails is really best understood as a systems issue. It's driven by external pipeline pressures rather than just a simple lack of physical space. Think of it this way. If you only look at the sheer number of physical beds, you are completely missing the pipeline that's actually filling them up. Which brings us to Section 2, why beds fill up. Let's diagnose the causes. You see, overcrowding rarely has a single isolated cause. It's much more like a perfect storm. Picture this. A county might suddenly face rising arrests, combined with an inability for individuals to post bail, which leads to pretrial detention. Mix that with slower case processing in the courts and growing behavioral and mental health needs. In fact, a recent statewide survey really highlighted that a lot of jails are dealing with a growing population of people who have serious mental health and substance use needs, all while dealing with limited medical staffing. When all these distinct external pressures stack up at the exact same time, a facility can swing from totally manageable to chronically strained in a shockingly short amount of time. And here is exactly how those pressures play out in real life. It's a massive ripple effect. Step 1, case processing in the criminal courts slows down. Step 2, because cases are moving slowly, the average length of stay for an individual increases. Step 3, because stays are longer, beds that normally would turn over and empty out just remain occupied. And finally, Step 4, the physical reality hits. This directly translates to double bunking, temporary housing, and severe facility strain. It's wild to think about, but a modest delay in a courtroom miles away creates an immediate, literal bottleneck inside the jail. Moving to Section 3, inside the jail walls. Let's look at the friction on the ground. Overcrowding is not just a numbers problem. I mean, that quote from our source material really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? When those beds fill up because of the ripple effect we just looked at, it fundamentally breaks down the safe and functional operation of the entire facility. It's not just about running out of mattresses for people to sleep on, it's about the total collapse of a complex ecosystem. Let's break down what that collapse actually looks like across 3 main pillars. Operationally, it becomes a classification nightmare. Facilities struggle to safely separate people by security level, medical need, or behavioral health status. Movement inside the jail becomes incredibly hard to manage. Then you have the staff. Correctional officers suddenly have less time for supervision and de-escalation. That leads to high tension, a much higher risk of conflict, and for sure, severe staff burnout. And finally, looking at services, rehabilitative programming gets delayed, and essential medical and mental health care is stretched incredibly thin. And look, these operational breakdowns, they do not go unnoticed. The Pennsylvania Department of Corrections actually oversees the inspections and standards for these county institutions. These inspections happen at least every 12 months and no more than every 24 months. Because of these pretty rigorous cycles, overcrowding often officially shows up first as a compliance problem during these very inspections, We're talking citations for too many people, a lack of required separation, or just broadly unsafe supervision conditions.
All right, Section 4, Pennsylvania's patchwork system. Let's look at the state's unique setup.
67. That number is literally the key to understanding Pennsylvania's specific challenge here. The state has 67 distinct counties, and because county jails are operated locally, not by the state, that means there are 67 completely independently resourced jail systems. And because you have those 67 independent systems, that local control creates a massive patchwork of unevenness. Think about it. Well-resourced counties, often your suburban areas with bigger tax bases, have larger facilities that can manage overflow. But smaller or more rural counties, they can reach their maximum capacity incredibly quickly and have far fewer resources to deal with it. You literally could have a situation where one county is functioning perfectly fine, while the county right next door is under severe operational strain. We also have to factor in external agreements. Things like additional detention roles, such as immigration-related detention contracts, can fold county facilities into arrangements that affect bed availability. Now, while these contracts don't define the overcrowding issues statewide, they are a documented factor in certain counties, eating up local bed space and further impacting staffing resources. Finally, Section 5, Fixing the Pipeline. Let's talk about state-level remedies. The big takeaway here is that Pennsylvania is increasingly treating this as the broader systems problem it is. Looking at the 2026 state budget proposal, we see consolidated funding streams, pulling together parole, probation, reentry, and jail-based medication treatment into a single, much more efficient appropriation. Separately, there's brand new indigent defense funding for additional attorneys and support staff in county defender offices. Why does this matter? Well, getting people access to counsel and treatment faster directly speeds up how quickly cases move. And, as we learned earlier, that court speed is a primary driver of the whole overcrowding ripple effect. So, when we summarize the data, it's clear there's no single magic bullet for this. Instead, it's a combination of solutions that target those systemic bottlenecks. We're talking about speeding up case processing so stays are shorter, expanding public defense, utilizing pretrial supervision and community-based alternatives where it's appropriate, improving mental health and substance use treatment both inside and outside the jail, and finally, really strengthening reentry planning to reduce the rate of repeat admissions. We have to treat the root pipeline causes, not just the physical space symptom. But I do want to leave you with a grounded reality check. Fixing a systemic pipeline, that takes time. The impact of better defense capacity, improved treatment access, and robust re-entry planning will only gradually show up in those population numbers. Overcrowding isn't just going to disappear overnight. But addressing the flow of the pipeline is really the only sustainable way to relieve the pressure on the front lines of the justice system. Which brings us to our final thought. As we've seen today, when that front line gets crowded, the effects spread like wildfire to the courts, to families, to staff, and heavily to local budgets. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. If jail overcrowding actually starts outside the jail walls, how does your specific community and your local justice system handle the overflow? It's a complex puzzle, but it absolutely deserves our continued attention. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the right questions, and I'll see you next time.